All right, Professor Fields here. We're in Chapter 3, Criminal Law, Criminal Justice and the Law, and we're discussing Module Learning Outcome number 3.3, which is explain the different types of law. We'll start off with common law. Common law was developed primarily from England, from our history, and what they looked at were practices. So whatever the community was doing, that became the law. It wasn't written down necessarily, but it became the practices. We do not have common law in the United States. All of our law is statutory law, means it's written down someplace. Then there's constitutional law. The Constitution of the United States, especially the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, regulate relationships with the government, such as the right to privacy in search and seizure, the right to remain silent, freedom of speech. Constitution is the primary document for law in the United States. In other words, California couldn't pass a law that said the police could come into your house without a warrant because it would be unconstitutional. So criminal law has two primary areas. You have procedural law, which determines how people are treated in the criminal justice system. For example, the Bill of Rights. It's the first 10 amendments to the Constitution of the Bill of Rights, and I've got a video you'll watch in the next section, which is kind of a silly video, but it explains it very well. And then there's substantive law, which designates which conduct is criminal. A criminal law is statutes that are passed by Congress and state legislatures. In the state of California, we have a number of different statutes that are passed, contained in a number of different codes. We have 17 different codes in California. Here are a couple of the primary ones we use: the Penal Code and the Vehicle Code. And there's also the Health and Safety Code, which regulates drug uses, welfare institutions, which regulates children. And then you have case law. In case law are court cases where the court interprets the Constitution and says, you know what, this is what we're going to do. Famous case, Miranda versus Arizona. You ask any 5-year-old what's Miranda mean, and they'll tell you the right to remain silent. And I talk about the right to remain silent in the Constitution. Now, when was the Constitution written? In the 1700s, I think 1787. And contained in the Constitution was the Fifth Amendment, which said that the people cannot be forced to testify against themselves. In other words, they can't be forced to confess to a crime. So lo and behold, in 1964 or 5, I think it is, Miranda gets arrested, and the police do not inform him that he's got this Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate himself. Was it a requirement before that? No, it wasn't. But after the Miranda case, they decided that this right was such an inherent right that the police should now, at this point, for any time they want to question somebody, inform them of that right to remain silent. So that's a very famous court case law. Civil law. Civil law deals with disputes between individuals or organizations, and they're usually looking to be compensated for some kind of wrong. It's usually a lawsuit. A couple differences between criminal law and civil law are that in criminal law, we can take away your civil liberties, in other words, put you in jail and take away your property. In civil law, you can't go to jail. A good case example we like to use is the O.J. Simpson case from the 1990s. O.J. Simpson was taken to court on a criminal charge of murder. The jury found him not guilty. In other words, he was acquitted of murder. It decided he did not do the murder. There was not the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed the murder. The Goldman family then took him to civil court, where the burden of proof is a lot less, and I've got a video about civil law we'll talk about in a minute, where the burden of proof is a lot less, and the jury did in fact find during that burden of proof that O.J. Simpson did murder his wife and Mr. Goldman. And did they send him to jail for that? No, they didn't, because it was only a civil suit. The only thing that the Goldmans could get were civil damages in the neighborhood of $33 million. Now, as you may know, OJ is in jail for a robbery he did in Las Vegas, but he never went to jail for murder. So in the following sections, there's some videos about the Bill of Rights and civil law that will help explain this a little bit better. Administrative law. Administrative law is laws passed by Congress that regulate and state legislatures that regulate different agencies such as the EEOC. What the EEOC is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And say an employer is discriminatory towards an employee, then the EEOC would have the ability to sanction that employer either through fines or through requiring them to change policy, something like that. Same thing with the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration. They can regulate medicines and things like that. So those are administrative laws.